Okay, this video is going to help review some of the concepts we talked about in Class 8. So Class 8 focused on the concept of goal setting, and we focus on the foundations of goal setting, then SMART goals, and maintaining motivation. At the end of class, there's also some goal setting tips that you can review when trying to be intentional with your goal setting. The homework after this class was to read the chapter on CVs, which will be used next week. When it comes to goal setting foundations, there are some key principles you need to understand. Some of this material you may be familiar with from previous classes or maybe even school. So our goals for this section are for you to understand different types of goals and things that are related to them, and to be able to write SMART goals, or at least understand when a goal is SMART or not. The first thing I want you to do, if you're reviewing this video because you missed class, was to think about what are your current goals that you have going on. And goals is very ambiguous here for a reason. You have goals that may be a few weeks long. You have goals that will be a few months long, and then goals that maybe go on years or for your lifetime, or maybe even beyond that. So take a moment and pause the video. What are the current goals you have? Go ahead and write them down, and these may be something that you revisit for your assignment coming up next week. Now, when we talk about goals, we can easily separate them out into two categories of short-term versus long-term goals. So our short-term goals, these are usually ones that take maybe a week to a few months to accomplish. Really, it could be a day. And they can be connected to long-term goals, but they don't necessarily have to be. In comparison, our long-term goals are goals that tend to take lifetimes or years to accomplish. They usually require an action plan, which we'll touch on more in a moment, in order to be successful. And then they also require these things called milestones. Short-term goals in comparison may have milestones, but they may not. Okay, in class we did an activity where we looked at some examples of goals and tried to determine if they were long-term or short-term. So for example, graduating. Graduating is going to take you about 4 years, inshallah, and that is what we would call a long-term goal. Compared to raising your GPA to a 3.0, that one is focused on the next 3 or 4 months, depending on your situation, of course. But let's say getting a term GPA of a 3.0, that one is considered a short-term goal. Starting a business, I've had students tell me, is a gray area because they know businesses that they could start tomorrow. So depending on who you are, this might be a short-term goal. It might be a long-term goal. Now, when we have these goals, we need to create structure in order to support our own success in our goals. There are two things that we include when we're planning our goals to enable that. The first one is called an action plan. So an action plan is when you create and organize the steps for your goal in a way that's very detailed, and it allows you to recognize all of the resources that will be needed. This helps guide you. So if your goal is to graduate, right, your action plan would include what classes you need to take, what internships you might need to do, what additional things outside of class you need to do. So it would be from beginning to end, how are you going to reach that goal? Now, in comparison, a milestone is a point where you're on your goal journey and you can stop for a second, look, and recognize that you've had some success. Depending on what your goal is, milestones look different. And milestones, remember, can be a part of a short-term or a long-term goal. Now, what's fabulous is when we hit milestones, often we also feel more motivated to continue. So if you're looking at a class example, as if your goal is to earn a B in life skills, for example, every time we hit a journal or an assignment or a test, these are all milestones, because once you finish that and you get your grade, You know if you're closer to that B or if you need to work a lot harder to get to your B now. In a personal example, think about the concept of weight loss or even weight gain, right? You have a certain amount that you want to lose or gain. Every time you hit maybe 2 kgs, that's a point where you can say you've been successful in gaining or losing weight. Okay? And that personal example, I'll take you back to the action plan. If our milestones are every time we lose 2 kgs, our action plan is what diet are we going to follow? What exercise plan are we going to follow? What supplements we might take? That's the plan we create in order to get there. But our milestones are the points where we can actually say, hey, I've done it. Or if you start noticing yourself slipping backwards, right, is a point where you recognize, am I doing what I need to do? So let's look at an example in an academic setting. So this is Sada. Sada wants to earn a degree in HR at ZU. She's trying to come up with a plan to be successful. She meets with her advisor and decides she will work hard to earn at least a B in all of her classes. Every semester, she reads the syllabus, creates a schedule for the assignment with her due dates, and plans study time. Okay, so Sada is like a lot of students in that she's trying to be successful. Now I want you to take a minute and I'm going to ask you to identify what is Sada's long-term goal. What is Sada's short-term goal? And what are Sada's milestones as well as her action plan? So those 4 concepts we talked about. Take a moment, pause the video, write down what you think they are, and then continue on with the video to confirm your understanding. Okay, so one of the easiest things students usually can identify is the long-term goal. Sada's long-term goal is to get a degree in HR. Okay, that one's kind of really obvious, right? You know that's going to take several years. Her short-term goal would be to work hard and earn at least a B in all of her classes. This one we can recognize because it's got some time behind it, but it's not too long. Okay, now if we think really hard, reading the syllabus, creating a schedule, arranging a study schedule, these are all her action plan because they're the things she needs in order to become successful. And lastly, while it's not explicitly stated here, but I did talk to you about it in an example a moment ago, her milestones would be the grade she receives on all of her assignments. And she would know if she's getting closer to her goal. If she gets her first exam back and it's a B, she knows that she's on track. However, if she gets a D, she knows that needs to change her action plan in order to become more successful, or maybe she needs to incorporate more study time. So this is a good point to stop and think for a moment. What is your own long-term goal? And what might a short-term goal be that you have at the moment? So again, go ahead, pause the video, and write down what is your short-term versus long-term goal at this time. And you're going to save this for ongoing conversations. Okay, now we've got into part 2. So part 2 of the class deals with setting what are called SMART goals. A SMART goal is a goal that's written in a particular way in order to make it easy to complete and to increase your likelihood of success. So the concept of SMART goals goes back quite far, and it's been around for a long time. So you may have also experienced these concepts in school. Now, each letter of the word SMART stands for a different thing. It's called an acronym. So the S stands for being specific. So your goal needs to be clear, and you need to have a good understanding of what it is you actually want to achieve. So on your screen, you can see some common questions to kind of ask yourself if you realize your goal is not specific. Like, for example, if I said I want to be smarter, well, that's not a very specific thing to say. Like, how do I want to be smart? What is smart? If I ask my in-laws, being smart means looking nice and, being dressed up. But in my own context, it talks about intelligence. So you need to be a little bit more specific about exactly what it is are we trying to do. In class, we looked at 2 examples. So if I give you, I don't think it doesn't show. So if I give you 2 statements, I want to earn a good grade in math versus I want to earn a B in math. Obviously, earning a B in math is more specific than being good in math. Being good in math is what we would call subjective. Sorry. So when we're being subjective, it means you're allowing someone to put in their own perceptions on the situation. So for some students, getting a C is good in math. For some students, the only good grade you can get in math is A. So we need to be specific on exactly what type of grade we're looking for. The M in SMART stands for measurable. So you need to be able to track your goal and to be able to understand when it's been accomplished. If you're looking at earning a particular grade, you could look at your overall grade in the course. If you're looking at something like weight loss or weight gain, you could look at the kgs, but you also have to understand the stopping point. So if an example of a non-measurable goal would be, I want to run a faster 5K. 5K is a type of race. That doesn't really tell me how much faster do you want to be. Do you want to be 1 second faster? Because that makes a big difference. So, but if I say I want to run my 5K faster by 15 seconds, then I will keep running and running and running until I hit 15 seconds off of my original score. Then I know, hallelujah, I'm done. Okay, so here you can see that same example. The A in SMART stands for attainable. Attainable means that essentially your goal is realistic, and it's realistic based on your abilities as well as your current situation. So look at the 2 statements in front of you. Which one is attainable for an average athlete? So your average athlete is probably not going to make it to the World Cup. However, this person in the second statement is saying that they're going to train over essentially 2 years in order to get to that championship. That's probably much more attainable for your average athlete. Then we get to the R in SMART. So R stands for relevant, meaning the goal makes sense for you and what's important to you. It also looks at, is this a good time to do this? And do we have everything that's required at the moment? So think about a teacher. Okay, you guys have known teachers in quite a few places and from different places. Which one of these would be relevant for a teacher? My goal is to discover a cure for cancer. Most teachers, that doesn't sound like it would be relevant because their training is all in education and communication of knowledge. They're not necessarily going to be the people that develop a cure for cancer. However, a teacher could be the person who inspires a student to find the cure for cancer. So something to kind of keep in mind when you're making goals. Are they relevant for you and what you're capable of and how your life is at the moment? And SMART goals, the last thing stands for T or time bound. So a time bound goal is essentially a goal that has a deadline. And you need to be realistic with that deadline. You're not going to lose 10 kgs in a month. That's not healthy. You can't take your GPA up, 2 points in 2 months. Again, not attainable based on that time-bound concept. So when we look at goals, what we want to see is essentially a date. So when I look at these two, they're the same goal. However, one has established when is the deadline for completing the goal. Okay, so when we add in all of these things, when we're specific, when we're measurable, when we're attainable, relevant, and time bound, that's when we can say that we've written a SMART goal. So at this point, you may want to stop, look at the goals that you had written down just a moment ago, and think about this. What part of your goals were SMART and which parts were still missing? So go ahead and pause the video. Was your goal specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, or did you need to focus more attention in one of those areas? And one thing you should always remember, right? You are sitting here deciding what your goals are. Now, other people will obviously be able to impact your goals. However, they cannot control the success. But you may just have to change exactly how you get to your goals. Okay, so if you didn't already, go ahead and look at that goal again that you wrote a few moments ago and determine where is it SMART or where might you need to work on the goal a little bit more.
Pencil?
Hello, Arjun.
This is pencil.
This is a pencil. Thanks for hanging out. So staying motivated when your goal seems impossible. So one of the readings was on maintaining motivation. And when we work on maintaining our motivation, there are some concepts that come up that we can use to help us. Excuse me for just a minute. Okay, so when we work on maintaining our motivation when planning our goals, these are the 4 things we can do. So the first thing is hunting out the interests. So understanding why you're doing whatever goal it is that you're pursuing. And making sure that you actually have an earnest reason for pursuing this goal. The second thing is being realistic. Sometimes we like to jump on other people's goals and join them in their journey, but it may not be something that is realistic for you to do at this time. And also, if we're choosing goals that are not attainable, that goes into the same concept of being unrealistic. The next one is setting high expectations. So you definitely want to challenge yourselves with your goals. And you want to look at your goals as you achieve them. If something is easily achieved, try a little harder and increase the complexity of your goal. If your goals are too low, you're going to notice that you don't really have the motivation to work on them. And then lastly, work on setting realistic milestones. So with the example of gaining or losing weight that we were working on with before, if your milestone is 10 kgs, it's going to be a lot of time before you hit 10 kgs, which is where doing something more like 2 kgs of weight loss or weight gain is probably more supportive and motivating for your average person. Okay. And then maintaining motivation while you're pursuing your goals is a little different. So think about the goals you're pursuing, and these are the things you should try in order to make sure you make it through them. So the first one is harnessing support, which this is the same thing essentially as asking for help. You need to identify what you need in order to be successful. If your goal is academic, maybe you need some more tutoring. So maybe you need to go to PALS or AWAHA. If your goal was a weight loss or weight gain, maybe you need to go in and see a dietitian, or maybe you need to have someone teach you how to work out. There are lots of different types of support that you can use in order to get to your goals. Then you have recording success. And so this can be done in a variety of ways. It could be posts that you make on your social media page about how amazing your progress has been. If you look on social media, you see a lot of people who record, especially their weight loss journeys. And they tell people what they're doing, what they're eating. They celebrate every time they hit a milestone. And what they're doing is recording success so that they can share their joy and share their hard work. And then lastly, everyone's favorite part is rewarding achievement. So once you hit one of those milestones, or once you do something really good towards one of your goals, giving yourself a little reward in order to make sure that you don't get burnt out in the process of pursuing your goal. Now, here's some goal setting tips that come across in your reading that I want to highlight. So we already talked about being smart about your goals, but I want you to really look at the goals you're making and consider how you're setting up the goals. If we use SMART goals, we're more supported versus if you're doing just randomly setting up your goals. Sometimes your goals fail just because they didn't have enough framework. The second thing is you really need to think ahead when you're planning what resources you need and what type of support you'll need to find. So if you want to lose weight, you don't just jump into losing weight. You sit down and you have to think about, okay, how am I going to eat? How am I going to exercise? Third is, especially if you have a long-term goal, you need to create that action plan with milestones. And this will just allow you to make sure that you fully thought through what you're about to embark on and that you know where you need to check in on things. And then lastly, remember to record your journey. So that way you can look back on it and adjust your plan if you find that something isn't working. Some other tips your book had that were good, writing down your goals and putting them in a place where you can see them easily. We already talked about this, but make sure your goals are a little challenging without, totally swallowing you. And then realize that you're probably not going to reach all your goals. Goals aren't meant to always be completed. And sometimes we make mistakes in the route to completing our goals, but you need to rise to those challenges. So, and then remember, the whole point of goal setting is to really look at what you want to achieve in life, to try and find motivation to especially change habits that you have. They say it takes at least 21 days to change a habit. So goal setting will support you in that and keep you motivated. And then, of course, as we reach our goals, our self-confidence is increasing, which you know from earlier conversations will increase your ability to do other things. So, and then this connects with what I was just saying with you're not going to finish or really achieve all of your goals. Certain periods, you're going to decide something is not as important, and a goal will no longer be relevant to you. Keep going on your goals, adjust them as you go, and remember that these are very fluid or living things. Once you write that goal down, you don't have to keep it. You can change it. Okay? And then the post-class homework was to read the section on CVs. And then next week, just a heads up, your CVs will be worked on in class and they will be due at the end of the week, along with a reflection about the content of your CV.